everybody, it's your At Percussion podcast number 236, and we're recording on May 31st. You're probably listening to this on July 2nd. That's how far behind we are. And my name's Casey Cangelisi, and with me as usual, I've got my co-host Ben Charles is here.
Hi everybody. Since Casey normally does dates, I wanted to just throw out a date. So Casey mentioned we're recording this on May 31st. And this is my favorite drummer's birthday. This is John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. It would be his 72nd birthday if he was still alive. So yeah, go listen to Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin. That's like the John Bonham big solo. And then also there's that fantastic Christopher Rouse piece called Bonham that's like a tribute to John Bonham. So go check out some John Bonham.
I would have thought Ringo was your favorite drummer.
Oh no, John Bonham for sure. And also,
okay.
You know,
how weird
from the Muppets, the wild drummer character on the Muppets, heavily inspired by John Bonham. So
Animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, happy birthday there, John Bonham. And we got Ksenia Kamienovich is also here.
Hey everyone.
Who's your favorite drummer?
Vinny Colaiuta. Why did I even think?
Come on.
Cut out that silence. Am I a snob? I'm a snob. It's fine.
No, not a bad choice.
When's his birthday?
Wait, he's a Sagittarius, and his moon sign is... No, I don't know. Not
Actually, if I can correct myself, John Bonham's my favorite rock drummer. Steve Gadd's my favorite drummer of all time. But sorry.
Oh, that is so boring. All right, Carly Vigna, who's your favorite drummer?
I think Carter Beauford from Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, he's so good. That music's so good. Yeah, that's okay. Those are all pretty hard to deny. So, well, we've got our guest today, you guys. She's been just definitely a hero of mine for a long time. I met her at the Zeltsman Marimba Festival. She was a guest artist. I was a student forever ago. And I mean, she just has such a prominent career, so young. Prize in 2007. The Opus Prize as Discovery of the Year is the name of the prize, I guess, and prize at the International Marimba Competition in Linz in Austria. 2005, the Montreal Symphony Orchestra Standard Life Competition, and the 2004 Prix de Europe prize. So she's a good friend and just someone I really look up to, one of my favorite marimbas out there. It's Anna Jolie. Caron, how's it going?
Hey, thanks, Casey. It's reciproc. It's I think the same of you. So it's nice
thanks.
To be with you. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Look at me now. I'm the big shot with a big podcast and
a cradle of filth.
I'm sure you were a student in Zeltsman Festival. Weren't you guest artist also?
Not the year I met you. I was just a student that year.
I remember you were performing something because I had to leave early, and you played something for me and a few friends because I would miss your concert. It was just like completely amazing as usual,
Oh, thanks. That's so nice. So it must have just been like the student feature concert, because I think I remember she put me at the end of one of those concerts because I was playing Yellow After the Rain like 5 times as fast.
No.
Something very ambitious.
A multi-percussion piece for me or something. It was amazing.
Oh, okay. So long ago. Yeah. Do you still get back to ZMF now and again? I remember I feel like I've been there several times.
I haven't gone since that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Well, I thought of inviting you because you've always been, of course, there's a lot of people. I mean, we all know so many great percussionists out there, and there's a lot of people kind of on our, in our minds to eventually invite. But I thought, okay, it's time to invite Anna Jolie now because I saw this great little how to practice marimba during COVID video that you put up. And I thought it'd be really cool if you could just, I don't know, maybe real quick before we get into anything too serious, because there's a lot of serious stuff to cover this week, unfortunately. But I don't know, how have you been helping people out during this time, and what have you been recommending how we practice?
Well, basically, that's what I did. I mean, I did those 2 videos. I really mean to make another one on one-handed roll. and lateral strokes, but I'm practicing. It's like, should I practice or make another video? Oh, I'll go practice. It's like I find it difficult to do everything at the same time. So, because you still need to get ready. I mean, to make a video like this. I mean, it looks like it's very simple, but you need to come up with interesting exercises, you know. So, but I think it helped my students because actually the reason why I did it in the first place was to help my students. Because, you know, they are at home and some don't even have mallets, but I made videos for those who have mallets. But so, yeah, I mean, so the idea was to make them in French, but I thought, why not doing them in English at the same time? So this way, I mean, it will help more people. And my students told me that they are actually doing those exercises. So it was really worth it. So I should make more. And I also suggested things on percussion, like, you know, doing body percussion stuff.
Yeah.
So they can actually do put everything together after, you know, with some kind of software. So yeah, I suggested a bunch of things. I have a colleague of mine who had a really great idea. Like, he composed a piece, like a snare drum study. Made of a bunch of rudimental stuff and like tricky stickings, and to be played on a pop song.
Oh, right.
A specific one. I don't remember what it is, but it's really good. And I thought, it's a very good way for students to be practicing on a pad, you know, a practice pad.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, I've been teaching, of course, those who have instruments. I've been teaching on Zoom, you know, online, as you probably did also.
Yeah.
But it's not it's difficult, huh? Because the quality is not so good. It's difficult to communicate.
It's so hard. I did a little interview with Steve Weiss just a few days ago, and Ben and I did a nice sound check beforehand, and I went back and listened to the recording, and I tried so many different things. I went through my sound interface, I tried my USB microphone, and I just couldn't get the sound usable. Like, I just thought, no, this just does not sound good. Like, there's something the Skype and Zoom and those things do to the sound. They just, I don't know, they change it somehow. So I ended up not using it. But yet I see, like, Dave Friedman, I mean, he does these videos, he does Zoom things, and it sounds great. So there's something left for us to still figure out.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's tricky. I figured the best way is to ask them to send a video, and then you do a lesson, and you comment. But even then, to communicate, you can't go so. There's a limit to what you can do, you know, to those kinds of lessons.
Yeah,
in terms of interpretation, it's very tricky.
Yeah, I'm going to give COVID a solid B-, because I thought like percussion literature was great. I thought that works great. I actually like doing percussion literature. I mean, I like being face-to-face. I just enjoy that more. But as far as getting the class done, we have listening exams, we follow scores, the students give presentations. It's pretty dang smooth online. But yeah, lessons, if we have to do this for a whole nother year, I think it's going to be it's going to get really old.
You know, I found one cool positive of the online lessons and the difficulty. Some of the things that are challenging is I've had a couple of students say, like, hey, you know, I've been paying more attention to this technique thing that you're always on me about because I know you might not catch it in the lesson, and so I figure I got to fix it on my own. And I was like, wow, like, what if you did that all the time? But it was so cool. You know, in some ways I see students like being a little bit more proactive and a little bit more independent because they have to be, you know. But it's tough.
Well, and that's the big thing we're supposed to be teaching, right? Is like, eventually we're not going to be your teacher anymore, and yeah, we want to, what's the saying? Give them a fishing pole, not a fish. What, Ben? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I might have mentioned this before, but like for me, I mean, when it first all came down in March, we just reverted to everyone's got to be at home. No one has marimba. Like, we did practice pad lessons, and I was like, oh, this kind of sucks. But at the same rate, for me, it was like when in college do we really like just drop everything? No marimba, no timpani, nothing. Like just focus on snare drum technique exclusively. Like we haven't done that probably since like I don't know, late middle school. And I mean, for me in my own practice and for my students, it was just like eye-opening. And it's not to say that I think we normally should just take months off at a time to only focus on that, but yeah, it was far from a complete waste. It was pretty eye-opening, like Carly was saying. And we had Matt Strauss on. Was that last episode or a couple of episodes ago? But we had a little farewell call for Matt Strauss because he's departing University of Miami. He's just with kids and all. It's just too much for him. But there was a great Matt Strauss-ism where he said, "Don't go through it, grow through it." And it was like, oh, that's perfect. So yeah.
I was going to say the hardest part about the switchover to once the blackout happened and we all went home, and speaking of some kids having instruments, some kids not, my plan was to let the people who have recitals take instruments home. But at the time, like, you know, I think like all the schools, we got new information every day and we got new guidelines every day. So if the guidelines hadn't changed yet and you happened to ask me, hey, could I borrow this instrument or that instrument, and they were still free to come in and get it, I would say like, yeah, sure. So I feel like, oh, I couldn't give a fair distribution of, hey, you can all have these instruments and this amount of gear. Not that I could have given everyone everything they wanted, but I only wish it could have all happened in a very like clean and concise way. So I could have said like, okay, everyone gets an instrument or nobody gets an instrument or something like that. It was just kind of different every day, you know?
Oh my God, there's so much we could talk about. About the pandemic situation, you know, like I'm worried not as many people will apply, or will, like, maybe some people will decide that if I'm gonna have like Zoom lessons, or you know, like not live lessons, I might just not go to school this year. Or you know, like maybe I should not go in music, like we don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm a bit worried about all those questions that could rise, and that could maybe make people go quit music, choose something else, or I don't know.
I had a serious talk about with two students about just like taking a gap year, you know, because they were just talking about all their finances and moving and all this stuff, and I said, like, if you've ever considered taking a gap year, now would be the perfect time. I took a gap year. As long as you just like practice your butt off, and study, it's worth it. You know, I don't think it's the end of the world to do that, but yeah, it's also scary on the other side because we need students to, maintain our jobs.
Well, it's also like some I have a very talented student who maybe was already questioning the place of music in his life, but it happens at the same time. You know, he said, I think I'm going to quit for a while anyway and try something else, you know. And it's sad because he's very talented, like exceptionally talented. So, but we'll see.
What are you working on right now? Like, what's shaking?
You mean like a repertoire?
Yeah.
I've just discovered a ballad, a Brahms ballad that I didn't know, Opus 10, number 4, and I've never heard that before, and it's absolutely beautiful. And but it's in the low register of the piano, and it requires quite some pedaling in some section. But it's too beautiful. I'm like, no, I have to learn that, please.
Oh, cool.
So I have to play that. So I'm, for the first time, asking a composer to arrange it to make sure that it's going to be good, you know. Usually I always do the adaptations myself, but I'm asking somebody. And I'm working on the chaconne. Also, I've been wanting to learn that for a long time, and I mean now it's like the perfect time because we have lots of time. And Yes, I'm kind of playing around with My Little Island from Aldridge because it's very difficult. You know, like in Nancy Zeltsman's repertoire list, it's like in the extremely difficult or something. I don't remember, but hard. So I was like, I need to be in shape, before my maternity leave. So I need to practice. So I'm playing around with that, but I find it difficult to get those pieces to the presentation performance level because we don't have a deadline right now. So I play for fun, but sometimes when it's challenging, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm gonna go back to that tomorrow. I don't have to succeed, So it's a bit tricky for that. Don't you find, guys, that I don't know? Do you have challenges like that?
Oh, of course. You mean when you don't have a deadline?
Exactly. We don't have a concert coming up,
It's kind of depressing too. I find practicing it's like, oh, but for what?
Oh, come on.
What I've discovered is I actually do it for myself. Like,
exactly.
No, but it's funny you say that. Like, it's funny you say that. Like, I had a friend in graduate school that he could practice and practice, and he could learn 1,000 pieces and never perform any of them, and he would have been totally satisfied with that. And I feel like almost like a bad musician because like I'm not satisfied with just learning the piece. Like I want to perform it. Like I practice for that. And the more I thought about it, like we feel like it's like I can't think of the word. I'm like indulgent. That like, oh, I only practice so I can get that performance high. But like the more I thought about it, it's not like the performance high. It's like the act of sharing with people that I enjoy. It's not the applause that I enjoy. It's the like sharing with people. I was like, okay, that feels slightly less indulgent. That I don't like practicing just for the sake of practicing. Like I like practicing so I can ultimately share with people. So yeah, I don't know. But
wow, come on, Ben, do it for the art.
Oh, shush. So mean. Wait, but I was going to say, I totally understand. But I think what's really beautiful about this time is, okay, we don't know when our next concert is, but much like Steve Schick talked about recently with us, is that what I was really inspired by was the fact that he learns things very slowly and that he takes his time. And maybe some of us are, marathon runners. Maybe some of us sprint when we learn music. But now we can try the Steve Schick method, which is like, take time, take that gestation period, boom. And, you're going to absorb the piece more, I think. And I think for the Caron, that's so much better than like trying to cram it into a week of learning and then performing it. So it's going to sound way more beautiful. So, yeah. I am all for practicing for no reason.
Well, if I can, I just there's something I've wanted to add since like before we even started, and we've mentioned it a couple times, but congratulations, Anjali, on being pregnant and, an upcoming, baby. That's a very big thing. And it's so wonderful that you mentioned a huge undertaking like the Bach Chaconne, which sadly is sort of a dark piece to go along with the pregnancy, but still a very powerful, large undertaking. But before you even mentioned that, it brought up this thing I wanted to share, and that is there's a pianist named Simone Dinnerstein, and I heard this story a while back, and I looked up the article. It's from November 5th, 2007, an NPR article, and I just wanted to read two quick little paragraphs from it. Very brief, but it says, Dinnerstein grew up admiring Glenn Gould. Like that eccentric pianist, she decided to launch her career with one of the most demanding and iconic pieces of the keyboard literature, the Goldberg Variations. The inspiration for such a daring choice was born from necessity. Dinnerstein was pregnant and wanted a piece she could explore deeply. So she used that time of being, stuck inside the house without really the ability to go out and run a marathon, so to speak, to sit and learn just a monster of a piece, a titanic piece. So I think that the Bach Chaconne, this is like a perfect time, whether you're pregnant or not, quarantine, if you have access to a marimba, to take on a huge piece like that maybe you wouldn't casually undertake in, the context of a normal semester or something like that.
I was gonna ask, I remember watching this documentary on Martha Argerich. It was her daughter who made the documentary, and it was actually about her relationship with her children. And at some point, she spoke about this album that she recorded while pregnant, and she had this very unpopular opinion that she said in front of her daughter, who was the director of the movie, that she hated the way she sounded when she was pregnant, and that now when she listens to it, that it was a really bad experience for her. But that was a very unique thing. I've only heard that from her. Most other people say that they go through a personal spiritual evolution that really opens them up, and they sort of like hear things more clearly and understand things better. What's the process been like for you so far?
Oh my God, what a question! No, because it's nothing. It's the same. No, but seriously, I don't feel any difference. But what I like is just knowing that my baby hears. It's just, for me, it's just this. It's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, sorry, that was not good. Or sometimes if I listen to music and it's not good, or if it's good, this is good, this is not good. Already doing some education. No, but yeah, it's more that. So every time I play, I like I like the fact that she's already like surrounded with music. So it's basically just that. For the rest, really, there's no difference for me. I think. I mean, maybe I'll realize later that it was different, but no. And the Chacon, I had to put it aside. At the beginning, it was my project until I give birth. Yeah, mm-hmm. It was the project to learn it. But to do that every day, it gets dark.
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
So I had to put it aside. I'll go back eventually, but no, it's too much. So I had to add other pieces in my work.
If I could add, not that I can accurately answer Ksenia's question, but I had a conversation with Casey a week ago or something like that. And one thing Casey sort of indirectly said is basically when you have a kid, you're not just practicing for yourself anymore. Like you're practicing, like to bring music into this world that, there's someone that you care so much about. And I mean, for me, not that I have my own child, but I have a nephew that's 2 years old now. And that definitely like changed my perspective, like having someone like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember this conversation. I think I'll also say, like, all of a sudden at least just for me personally, if someone, like, insults and digs, like, you just don't care anymore. It's like they don't bother me anymore. It's like, what? Yeah, oh, okay. I don't care. Like, my purpose is not for me anymore. It's for this other person. So if a third party thinks I'm a piece of garbage, yeah, cool. That's fine. That doesn't hurt
Okay.
my kid. So okay, cool. It's very, very weird. Not something I expected at all.
Does Pius know that? He should stop
it's
trying
Pius.
then.
Yeah. You know what? Pius and Erica almost were going to join tonight. I almost had them joining.
Oh,
yeah.
My God. Oh.
Busy with her cooking, great stuff for him.
I was gonna. They said, "Oh no, we don't want to. We want to make sure it's Anna Jolie's episode, not turns into."
Nice of them. It would have been nice, but thank you.
Yeah, but Pius was concerned it would turn into Casey and Pius joke episode, which is a valid concern. Yeah.
It's quite entertaining to follow you guys, huh?
Oh, good. Yeah, we try.
No, but seriously, Casey, I saw you play with, I don't know how you say in English, when you carry the baby with a backpack or something,
Yeah, backpack.
And
yeah.
I don't know if it was probably on YouTube very recently.
Yeah.
You were practicing, with the baby there, sleeping, I think. I think he was sleeping.
He was in and out of that one, if I remember right. I think it started with him looking, but then he just just fell asleep. This is fall asleep, by the way. Yeah, that's that's,
for listeners.
That's fell asleep.
Imagine.
Yeah, it's funny. All those things are really great. Like baby carrier, the front carrier, it's like the best thing in the world for 2 weeks. And then it doesn't work anymore. But get all those things. They'll save you. Or like the boppy pillow, the thing you can just place her on, and it kind of goes like this, so she can't roll out. That thing is just amazing for 3 months or so, much longer than the front carrier, and then it just suddenly doesn't work anymore, and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? The boppy pillow doesn't work anymore, and he can get out of it, and oh no, what do I do? And then you'll figure it out. Yeah.
Baby
compared to touring and learning all this hard rap and doing all the stuff that we all do, you're gonna just knock it out of the park.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, let's shift to another little topic this week. I meant to introduce the news today, and this is going to kind of turn into a kind of themed episode, just kind of by coincidence. You guys know there's a whole lot going on in the news right now, and it's just so many riots and this murder of this poor man. George Floyd is just all over the news right now, and there are these resulting riots that are just occurring daily in all our major cities. So, of course, we are recording on May 31st. So who knows what the news will be in nearly a month from now, July 2nd, when we release, or over a month from now, technically. But quick, some news that's related to protest and also possibly wrongful police doing, but we're not really sure. Today, on release date, July 2nd, in 1980, Grateful Dead's drummer, Mickey Hart, who I think we definitely talked about on the show before, and I'm sure a lot of y'all listeners have heard about before. He, along with their guitarist Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead, of course, this is one of the two percussionists in the Grateful Dead, along with their road manager and 34 other people, get arrested at one of their shows, and they're apparently trying to break up a fight, which was a drug bust turned into a fight with the police. And the guitarist is booked on suspicion of inciting a riot and resisting arrest, and Hart on suspicion of inciting a riot and disturbing the police, as well as, disturbing the peace and obstructing justice. So Mickey Hart and Bob Weir thought there were way too many cops, and supposedly one of them was standing on this kid, and the kid was injured, and big fight with Mickey Hart. Ben, you know a lot about Mickey Hart, right? Have you talked about Mickey Hart before?
I have, but only in the context actually of other people. Like, he produced an album for the taiko drum group Kodo. But I read the article that you sent, and it was very very reminiscent of things that are going on now. And actually, I started to take us off path a little bit, and maybe start to get away from music for a minute, but I guess it's important. Yesterday I could not stand all this news anymore. And so I hate to be that person that sounds like this, but yesterday I just turned off social media for a day. I checked our Facebook chat for this, but other than that, I did not go on Facebook at all. And there was, I was like, let me just turn on some trash TV on Netflix. And there's a series on Netflix called Trial by Media. And I turned it on, and it was not trash TV. It was actually very insightful. It was produced by George Clooney. And it got into, back in, I think it was 1991 in New York City. Don't quote me on the year. There was an African immigrant that was in the United States studying, and he was in the vestibule of his apartment trying to get inside, and there were 4 undercover cops that came up, and they thought he was trying to get out a gun when he was just trying to get his keys out, and they opened fire and shot him 41 times and killed him.
41 times.
Yeah, and it just blew my mind that I'd never heard of this. I think Malcolm Gladwell briefly mentions it in one of his books, but this was a case where he wasn't even suspected of a crime. He wasn't, quote unquote, resisting arrest absolutely nothing. And I mean, it was just shocking. Like, we learned of the civil rights movement in school as something that happened with Martin Luther King and the bus boycott and sit-ins and all this. And it seemed like something of the past. And all of a sudden, I realized that the civil rights movement never ended. It's still like we're on the same movement as today. And it got me thinking so much about when we had I'm going to embarrass myself and not remember his name.
Michael Spiro.
Michael Spiro, but also the guy that teaches at Sam Houston. He's in Texas. I should remember his name. He went to UNT. Johnny Lane. That's the name. Johnny Lane, and he talked about the Innocence Project, this musical project he works on with Alan Oddie, and they're giving a voice to basically, people that were incarcerated for crimes they did not do. And he said, you feel almost stupid doing this as like, a white person that's never been in the justice system or anything like that. And he said that these people said, no, thank you, because you're giving us a voice. And that's so critically important. And so it got me thinking about like, what is a piece that I can like learn? Like, I wanted a piece that spoke very directly to what's going on in the world. And sorry, I'm kind of going off on a rant here. Do you guys know the George Lewis piece, North Star Boogaloo?
I know that title, but
so it's not published. And I've emailed the composer to try and get a hold of the performance materials, and I have a friend that's played it, so hopefully I know that it is possible. It was written for Stephen Schick, but basically the North Star for slaves was what they would follow to freedom. Right. And in the 19th century, if you wanted freedom as a slave, you would escape by following the North Star and escape to the north. And George Lewis noticed the analogy now for black youths is basketball. Basketball is your way out of the projects. If you can, make a career in basketball, that's how you can make it out. So it's a very cool piece with some sort of hip hop influence in it. There's talking about your mama is in the piece, but at the same rate, it's so relevant today that we have people living in poverty. They're just screwed and can't get out. There's no equitable system for them to get out of this terrible thing that they're born into, basically, except for a career path in the NBA. So sorry, Casey, to hijack your thing, but that was my thought process.
No, thanks. That was perfect. No, thanks, Ben. That was absolutely great. But Mike Spiro said something about this.
Yeah, he talked about getting arrested in the civil rights movement. Walking alongside the protesters. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about what's considered safe spaces today, and he was kind of saying like, well, from the perspective of civil rights, and a lot of people from that era say, yeah, well, from the perspective of civil rights, like, what are you guys complaining about? But I was talking to Mike Udall last night too, the beta percussion faculty. We had a little meeting, and of course we were talking about what was going on, but he said something similar. I mean, he said, like, I feel like we've already done this. We were already supposed to get over this, and it's just amazing how things are arguably worse, in a lot of ways. It's like, what did we do all that fighting for in the in the 60s and 70s? And of course, none of us were there for that. But hearing these people say that, I mean, it's really profound. And it got me thinking, like, man, the riots are just really devastating, and they're really depressing. And there's all this data, like, we know for a fact it spreads awareness, great. But it also, I mean, it just like it raises unemployment because businesses get damaged, and things really, really change. It causes like very, very tangible harm that obviously you can see. But just in my personal opinion, I mean, it solidifies feelings that are already felt and opinions that are already generated. So if you're on side A, you think stronger about side A. If you're on side B, you feel stronger about that. And it's just like, it's such a sad time right now.
I was just going to ask Anjali, since I don't know personally, but what is the situation like in Canada? Is it comparable at all, or is this uniquely a U.S. problem?
No, there were riots in Toronto. There was a riot, I think, in Toronto today. And I mean, that kind of discrimination is happening everywhere, I think. And it's funny because I was watching a movie yesterday on Netflix, All Day and a Night. I don't know if you've seen it. It's basically like the story of a black guy who, well, I'm not gonna ruin, I'm not gonna, but it shows how he committed the crime, but why? Basically, like his life was so hard from the beginning, not just from racism, but just because he was coming, he was raised in a difficult world, kind of, like gangsters and poverty and violence and drugs. But I feel like the discrimination just keeps us in some kind of vicious circle. Like some people will not get better lives if it keeps happening. Like it's like, yeah, they are stuck. And some people, it's very sad. It's just what I can say. I mean, like some smart people, they just don't have it easy, and the discrimination continues. So it's like they're stuck there, and I can't believe we're still there.
It's really frustrating to see. Yeah, heartbreaking and frustrating. Yeah.
And if I could tack on to what Anjali said, she said, like, it seems like we're doing the same thing over and over and over. And one of the most profound things that anyone has said on this podcast was when Megan Arns was one of our co-hosts, she talked about in her travels to study African music, they actually visited the sites where the slave trade started in Africa. Right. And it's like I vaguely described it. I can't really, there's some sort of structure there. I don't know exactly what it was, but this started in the 15th century. And it talks about literally the only way that you can do this is if you can convince yourself that these are less of human beings than you are. And she said, seeing that site where humans were robbed of their dignity centuries ago was just like such a profound experience. And yeah, I mean, it's like it led to slavery, and then slavery ended, but then, there was all sorts of discrimination, segregation lasted like 100 years. I mean, it's just, it's so fascinating to think that this seems like such a new problem and it's so old, but history repeats itself, as they say.
There's a really cool, it's a few years old now. I believe it's 2017, but a little TEDx talk that is pretty short, about 20 minutes. But Why I, as a Black Man, Attend KKK Rallies by Daryl Davis. And this guy is pretty dang famous now for being, he's actually a pianist. He's like a honky-tonk bar pianist with his band. But no, he has this really cool TED Talk about how he convinced like one of the national leaders of the KKK over the course of several years to leave the Klan. And it's an easy watch. It's excellent. I mean, he like has the guy's robe. It's really beautiful. And it's again, like I feel like, yeah, the place where this progress happens is like interpersonal relationships. It's on these little small steps. It's not these humongous like it's not break in and burn down the front door of CNN headquarters. Like that's that's just like stoking anger on the other side. It's like, oh, that's not a good idea.
No, definitely, but still, it does need systemic change so that these things do not happen anymore, because they are disproportionately just awful towards one group of people. So it definitely needs a systemic change.
But like, you think about what and look, Casey, you might want to think about editing this out depending on where it goes, but you think about like what people are seeing from that. It's like racist people, like they're afraid of Black people, they dislike Black people because they're like, oh, these people are angry and violent and dangerous. And now, like, every day with these giant riots where you see both Black and white people, but a lot of Black people being like angry and violent. It's like, that's not a good that's not a good step,
Well, that's the media's also responsibility and how they are going to portray this, and there is rage that has no reason, and then there is rage that's completely justified. I mean, when you watch a movie and say a parent or a person loses someone close to them and they become enraged, you don't think, oh, damn it, why are you angry? You know, that's not how you're supposed to behave. No, you understand, you empathize. But if you always strip these people of their dignity and of their humanity, then you can see them as an angry crowd and think that they're perpetuating some sort of stereotype. The point is to just sit down and listen.
But I think this is the circle that Angelique's talking about, and it's why we have people like Mike Udow told me last night, like Mike Spiro said, like I feel like we've already done this. Why didn't it work before? It's like, right, because that's part of the cycle. That's part of the cycle. That's probably why more racist cops sign up. It's like, well, I'm going to go enlist because look at this. Like, it's like, you know, it's like, no, I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's why like the mayor of Minneapolis condemns it. It's why the mayor of Atlanta condemned it. It's like, no, we need to condemn like violence of any sort, you know.
Well, and just to echo what Ksenia said, I guess this is up for debate, but the newest form of American music, or the newest form of American art, is hip hop music, which emerged in the late 70s, early 80s. And obviously we get into the late 80s and early 90s and you get what we call gangster rap. And it was politically explosive. Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush talked about it on the campaign trail, how violent this music was getting. And these guys said, listen, this is the world we're living in. We're making music that reflects where we live. And if you listen straight out of Compton, it's not pretty. It's not polite. It's very angry and has a lot of foul language and talks about inner city issues and gang violence and all this because that's the world they were living in.
Do you have a favorite Snoop Dogg album, Anna Julie?
I can't stand, sorry, okay? I can't stand Snoop Dogg.
Can't stand Snoop Dogg.
I'd like to thank me.
Have you heard Cradle of Filth? They're pretty dark.
It's just the smoking. I mean, I have nothing against marijuana, really. I mean, I have nothing against it, but it's like it's a bad example for young people. It makes it so like normal to smoke. I don't know.
But isn't he like with Martha Stewart or something?
Are you talking about smoking weed? Are you talking about smoking weed?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's fine to smoke weed, but he does it all the time, and it's like cool. So like I don't like the impact that it has on some people who are like, they're like, well, it's okay, it's not bad. Snoop Dogg does it. I don't know, it's too much. It's just too much. Anyway.
He's also successful and talented, and I'm going to go with South Park, which I think they have like a solid A- for being what I consider the moral authority of the world. And I think they nail it on this one. They say like, hey, smoking weed is probably not like bad for you. It's, you know, probably not as bad as they say, but the thing that's really bad about it is that it makes you satisfied with being bored. So that's the time when you should be learning a new skill or like getting a talent or like doing something with your life. And when your body's telling you you're bored as a young person, that's when you need to like go do something and become someone. So yeah, Snoop Dogg like is someone, you know. But yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, of course, this is silly what we're talking about now. But yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's dangerous for kids because it's like, yeah, maybe it's not all that unhealthy or whatever, but you need to do something with yourself.
You should go watch his award acceptance speech. I'm sorry to hijack this, but go watch his award acceptance speech where he literally thanks himself for 30 seconds for showing up every morning, for being there for himself. And he's there with an award and he's like, I'd like to thank me for being there, for working so hard, for being there every day. Through the thick and the thin, I was working it. So.
Okay, I have to say, I don't know him very much, okay? And if he's up there, he must be smart. Huh? He's got to be.
Somewhere, yeah. Somewhere, probably, yeah.
I shouldn't judge too fast.
I'm impressed how much Ksenia knows about Snoop Dogg.
Oh, come on. He's like the saint patron of Serbia. No, just kidding. No, but he's so related to the Pulitzer Prize winner that we're going to talk about now, right?
Well, before I do that, just a few fun facts. We started this with Mickey Hart, the drummer from the Grateful Dead, and his arrest trying to stop some police officers in 1980. And I just found a few fun facts about him that you might not have known, but he was raised by his mother, Leah Hart, and she was a bookkeeper, a gown maker, and a drummer. Apparently, the father, Lenny Hart, abandoned the family when Mickey was just a toddler. And yet, this is a big missing piece I don't know, but I'm sure is well known. He somehow later becomes the Grateful Dead's original money manager, and he disappears in 1970 along with $155,000 of the Dead's money. The father, Lenny Hart, he's found a year later by a private detective that I guess the Dead hired. Again, another missing piece here. I just kind of threw this together. And he's found baptizing people under the name Reverend Lenny B. Hart. And then they find him and arrest him on embezzlement and fraud and all that. And apparently Mickey Hart is so ashamed and embarrassed that his dad did this to the band that he leaves the Grateful Dead and doesn't return for 3 years. So he leaves the band in 71 and then returns in 74 and is their second drummer for a really long time. He also was a big band drummer in the U.S. Air Force, Mickey Hart we're talking about, not the father anymore. And he has a black belt in judo, fun fact. And the most important fact of all, he was first chair in all-state band. So,
Pinnacle of success.
Whoop-de-doop-de-doo.
Really important.
Yeah, that's pretty dang cool. So anyway, that happened today on release date. Oh man, this episode is a drag. Holy cow! But on positive news, we May 4th they announced the Pulitzer Prize winners. So the 2020 Pulitzer winner goes to, oh my gosh, my notes are so scattered. Here we go.
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Anthony Davis for his opera The Central Park 5 is the 2020 Pulitzer winner, and that opera was released just the previous year. And you may have heard of The Central Park 5, of course, is a huge news story in 1980. Right? Is that right, you guys? 1980?
89, I think.
Oh, 89. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, my notes are just like all over the place. But you know, these young boys, Antron, Kevin, Corey, Joseph, and Raymond are wrongly convicted of a sexual assault in Central Park, and one of them's trial is adult Raymond, I believe, goes to prison for 15 years as an adult, and then it's a mix and match sentence for the rest of them. But these poor boys get convicted of this crime and are later exonerated by DNA evidence and a conviction. And there's this beautiful, I've been looking into it. It seems like a great work of art. It seems really, really excellent by Anthony Davis. And it's a little 2-act opera called The Central Park 5. What did you all think of this?
I thought that it was really funny. I looked up a conversation that he had, I think at UCSD, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. And he spoke about how interesting it was because he had started working on the opera, I think he said in 2014 or 15, and then had a workshop performance in 2016, literally, I think 3 days after the election. And the opera features a young Donald Trump, among other things, sitting on a golden toilet.
Trump's one of the characters. Yep. Yeah. Well, and you might know this is at least as far as Mr. Davis says, the composer. He says he really considers this to be the beginning of Donald Trump's political career, because Donald Trump was one of those people that campaigned to like have them locked up and had a whole slogan of like do the right thing and lock these boys up and convict them and all this stuff. Like he was on that end, which as we know, like this dude is always has huge fortification behind whatever the last conspiracy theory he was privy to which at the time happened to be that, and as we know later was like Obama's not an American, and later it was vaccinations are, cause autism. He's one of those. And I mean, yeah, he's just like all these conspiracy things he's always backed. And this was perhaps the first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Regarding the characters, actually, I have a little screen sharing to do. So if you're on the old YouTube, you can see some of just some shots from the production. And these are the 5 boys in Harlem before they go to the park. And let's see. So yeah, this is the original staging. This is, can you tell?
Oh my God.
That's the Trump character that Ksenia mentioned. And here are the 5 boys in Central Park. And this character is interesting. Linda Fairstein was the attorney for the city who was trying really hard to convict them. And something the composer said that I thought was kind of interesting is that there's a feminist and a Black Lives Matter clash, because something she is trying to do is really make this conviction because it's a sexual assault in the park. And so for the side of like, I guess, according to him, like feminism, she's really trying to make this conviction as a big career stamp and a big time lawyer, like success. And I guess she jumps to some conclusions that maybe she shouldn't. And she's trying to really make the case fit more than it should, or make her side, sound more correct than it is and convict these boys. So, and apparently she still believes they did it. Like she writes stories. She has a book, and she writes these crime novels. And I guess she still to this day believes the boys did it. So here she is again interrogating one of them. And the most interesting character, in my opinion, is this guy. This is the Mask. Masque, and the mask represents oppression in its many different forms. So it's a fictional character that appears as news headlines. Here, the jacket he's wearing, you can see there's like newspaper print headlines all over his outfit. And then later he appears, I guess, as one of the police officers or interrogators, something like that. But the mask takes many forms of oppression. So I thought that was a cool character. So, yeah, that's the Pulitzer 2020.
Didn't you think it reminded me a bit of West Side Story? I mean, it's not at all it's not as light. It's very dramatic, but the subject is racial. It's a racial issue, kind of. But also the music, like all those different styles, and it's American, it's in English, so for me. But really, like, didn't you think that? Like, did you think about it? For me, it was like, oh my God.
The city setting.
Yeah, exactly. Also,
yeah,
the street, on the street.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. I hadn't thought of that, but I totally see what you're saying. I had such a hard time finding good footage of the opera. I mean, I guess it's a new opera. We're not going to find a performance on YouTube, although or at least a nice performance on YouTube. I think there is a performance on YouTube. Sorry, Anjali.
Yeah, I think there is, but I just watched the 20 minutes excerpt. Mm-hmm. But it starts with vibraphone. There's drum set, of course. So yeah, for me, it was very similar. I'm sure he was influenced, but maybe not. Because I think his music in general has different styles. So maybe it's just his style, but I don't know. I would be curious to know if West Side Story had an impact on him, anyway.
He seems like he's real. I know hardly anything about this composer, but it seems like he's really rooted in jazz and classical music. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ben, I think you had something.
On that note, I think also, I mean, it's kind of impossible to escape the influence of West Side Story on Browning. It's like one of the greats.
Right.
Which actually, interestingly, it did not win the Tony the year that it was released. I can't remember what did, but there was some other
Yes,
it's still a household name that we know, but I mean, it's no West Side Story. And to reiterate, we've talked about this before, but Michael Colgrass was was the original drummer for West Side Story. But anyway, no, I had a question related to this for I guess for Casey and Carly in particular, because I looked at the committee, and I thought, I mean, the two names that stuck out to me were John Baptiste, who is like the band leader for Stephen Colbert, which that's so cool that someone that's so popularly known like that is a Pulitzer committee member. And then also Kevin Putz, who's the professor of composition at Peabody Institute and Johns Hopkins. I guess that's at John Hopkins University. But and Kevin Putz has several wonderful pieces for percussion, including marimba concerto or marimba solo and a great chamber piece. But there was one other name on there. He's actually the chair, William C. Banfield, who is from Berklee College of Music. And I was just going to ask Casey and Carly, did you both went to Boston Conservatory, but did you either of you know him at all? I guess no. I know Berklee's huge, so.
My experience at Berklee was mostly just if I saw a kid with a Dream Theater shirt on, which was all of them, I went and said, hey dude. What's your favorite Mike Portnoy lick?
Portnoy sucks.
It's like Rush or Portnoy, which one? I don't think that person was the dean or the chair when I was there.
Well, he was the chair of the Pulitzer Committee. He's just a professor. Oh. Actually, it says he's professor of liberal arts and Africana studies, music and society, Berklee. So I don't know how much the Boko Marimba kids would have known him, but
yeah. Well, we did know, and Carly, maybe you remember too, but we did know the Berklee dean or chair was a Nancy Buddy. But I feel like I knew the name, but it wasn't that person, as I recall.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is like 20 years ago, but yeah. Yeah.
Carly, I think you had something though.
I did. I wanted to say when I was reading up about all this, I found that in addition to this opera, which I hope I get to see live someday, there was a Netflix miniseries called When They See Us that came out. How's this for history? 1 year ago today it was released. This is recording date, May 31st, 2019. And I haven't seen it yet. I just read about it this afternoon, but it's about, the same story, the Central Park Five. So I think, as a couple people have said, like we keep finding out more and more, or just hearing about or having this conversation more and more, and it seems like things are getting worse, and why aren't they improving, and why are we still stuck in this pattern? But I guess what is so important, one, is that we're recognizing and having this conversation, and especially now when I think so many people's focus can be like, we have the time and energy to really be thinking about this, and how can I make a difference, and what can I do, and what should I do? It's just important to keep having this conversation and keep engaging with these works of arts, and just keep going.
I've actually started that that series on Netflix. Quite a while ago, actually, when it came out. And I have a hard time getting through anything new right now because I don't find I have time to watch stuff. But certainly, like, if you're not privy to the story, it seems like it's done really, really well. I don't know. It's like it's hard to watch after you've it feels like a story you've heard before. But in a way, it's even harder because it's just these young kids. That we're just in the wrong place at the wrong time,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I was gonna change topics a little bit. Sorry, but I'm sure we're gonna keep talking about this for a long, long time, and hopefully gonna be witnessing a lot of progress. But I was gonna ask Anjuli, I was looking at your bio, and it said you won the 2004 Prix d'Europe, and it is a grant, from what I understand, to go study in Europe, right? Could you tell us? Oh, you're muted. Yeah. Could you tell us? Did you study? Who did you study with?
The Prix d'Europe is a national competition in Canada. It's big, and it used to be a grant to study in Europe, but now it's a grant to study anywhere you want. So I used it to study with Nancy.
Oh, you used it to study with Nancy. Oh, lovely, lovely. Yeah. But I also saw that you played with Sejourné, and you listed Bogdan Bacanu as one of your professors.
It's interesting that, I was just thinking, I didn't use it only to study with Nancy, because I already had studied a bit with Nancy when I won it. I don't think I would have won it. I don't think I would have won it.
Won it, yeah. I'll tell you one story.
Otherwise, but I went to study with Bogdan after with that grant also. So, but I didn't study at his conservatory. I just took private lessons. I went there for 2 weeks. I think I went twice, maybe, or maybe once. But like for a long time, I had lessons every day.
Could you tell us how that was? I know that it might be, sometimes it's a little bit of a hated topic. Like, could you tell us what your professor was like? But I'm really curious to hear about someone's experience.
If I could just tack on my question to Ksenia's, not only that, but just in general, how did Nancy Zeltsman influence you? I guess directly or indirectly.
Okay.
Because she's such an iconic figure, but like I watch like her big name students like Casey and Pius play, and they look nothing like each other, and they look nothing like her. So
they don't even stand and sit the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nancy is, I think, a very good teacher, and she respects everybody's styles. It's I said at some point, should I learn traditional grip? Everybody around me is playing traditional. She said, you're doing fine, Steven, just keep it. And it's one example, but she was really, I don't know, I felt like she had confidence in our abilities, and she made us find our own style. And I think the biggest influence that she had on me, why I went to study with her, was the sound. I listened to a few recordings. At that time, internet was not such a big thing, okay, because it was like 2002, when I was looking for a teacher, like where should I go? And I listened to a bunch of people. And for me, Nancy's sounds like, oh my God, I want to sound like this. And so I went there, and she changed my playing a lot regarding expressing myself, not just musically, but visually. Not that it's a show, but it serves the music. Mm-hmm. So it really changed my whole playing, because she would tell me, you look like you're doing beautiful things, but you look like you're not involved. You're like. So I realized that I was kind of, in French, it's pudique. Is it something that exists in English? No? When you're shy to express yourself or to be naked, like I was like, I wanted to be in control.
How do you say it again?
Pudique.
Natural talent.
So she made me do some exercises, and I started to practice in front of the mirror, just to see, like, what does it look like. I don't do that anymore. It was just like a little face, like to see how powerful it was. And sometimes it would actually give me ideas to perform. So I started to express myself more. So I started, I think, to be more convincing and more expressive in my playing. So as I said before, it's not theater at all. That's not at all the idea. Nothing is calculated when I play. I don't think I don't like when people are too expressive physically, because it steals the show. But I think you have to allow yourself to be into it a little bit,
To be involved.
Mm-hmm.
She told me once.
That changed my thing a lot.
Yeah, she changed me a ton too. I feel like, speaking of the visual side of things, she said to me once, I don't remember what the heck it was, but she said, "Oh, you're making it look too easy." Like she was watching me play something, I was playing it really well, and she like did that Nancy thing where she's trying to figure out what she doesn't like about it, but it's hard to put into words. And, she said, I got it. You're making it too easy. And that's cool that you can like play it well, but that it shouldn't appear easy. This is like really, and that makes so much sense. That's like such a good comment. Like if the music is like intense and strenuous and the player's playing it like la-di-da, this is a piece of cake. Well, it's not very fitting,
Exactly. And also the use of silence. Everything about interpretation, basically, she made a big difference.
So Casey, just please play a wrong note so we could believe that you're human just once every, 10, 15 minutes and make a face like you're really focusing and it's going to...
Brush up your acting chops so it just seems difficult.
Nancy Pants, let me tell you about Nancy Pants. So Nancy Pants, she can, I think a lot of teachers, they can fast track you to things that will happen naturally if you just keep playing. So there's a lot of stuff that will unfold, like if you just keep playing. This is me just theorizing here, so don't there's zero citations or credibility behind this, but this is just something I think. There's a lot of teachers that they can fast track you to stuff that will happen naturally if you just keep doing it. Like your technique will get better if you just keep playing. Your ability to control dynamics, which is technique, that will get better as well. Your ear will get better as you listen more. Stuff like that will just happen. I feel like Nancy was able to really change how a lot of us thought about music. Definitely how I thought about it. And not that you were always able to apply that to what you were doing, but you would find these pockets and places where you could really apply it. And yeah, I just remember thinking the year Anna Jolie was at ZMF, thinking this is great. This is the way all these artists think and how different they all are. This is kind of the best thing out there. And I've been a lot more places since then, of course, but I still kind of think that's true, Carly, what do you think? You studied with old Nancy Pants.
Well, what really resonates with me, what Anjali said was that she helps everybody kind of find their own voice, and in a certain sense, Casey, like you said, she kind of curated these artists and this experience at ZMF. I felt like that was Boston Conservatory. Everybody was working to find their truest version of themselves and what they wanted to express, and that was just the the environment that was created. And I learned so much there in those 2 years that so much of it didn't sink in until later, when I realized that's how I integrated that, and that's what that experience left with me.
You had a good crop. Well, we both had good crops. We both had really good 2 years to be there, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. That was, and any school experience with the people that you're with in the studio, that makes up so much of what you learn is from the people that are in the practice rooms with you and the conversations you have, after performances, or on top of course, the faculty is who you're directly learning from. But yeah, that makes a huge difference.
So lovely. But could we go back to my question before Ben stole it completely? So could we know what Bogdan is like?
I said to tack on.
You didn't tack on, you kidnapped it.
Bogdan really believed in me. It's almost what I come back with the most. He thought I was really good, so that's great. So he really believed in me, and he just wanted the best for me. So he pushed me very hard. I was learning the Séjourné Concerto, and it was new at that time. And the cadenza at the beginning, the now second movement, I thought it was difficult. Going up in the high register to play very loud, and Bogdan is very intense. So if it's forte or double forte, fortissimo, it has to be very, very, very loud, the loudest that you can, and as the most expressive that you can. It's always really intense. So it was difficult technically, so it challenged me very much. Like, he was like, faster, faster, louder, louder, I can't.
That's exactly how I imagine him, just yelling faster and louder.
But I liked that kind of dynamism, that energy. And he gave me a lot of confidence in myself too. And we worked on Bach also together. I discovered Bogdan because he was doing a masterclass at ZMF, coaching Pius. Pius was playing some Bach. I don't remember what it was. And really, Bogdan taught as a pianist would do. And I had never seen that in my life, in a percussion masterclass. And I played piano before, and for me it was completely like inspiring, and I had to study with that guy. Because musically he was saying things that were very different than what I have seen in the past in the percussion field. So I had to go there. So it was very inspiring to work on Bach with him also. And he told me stuff like, you have to decide when you do a transcription if you want to sound like the original or if you want to adapt it. It was the first time that I heard that. And so anyway, we became close. He's very intense, So that's basically it.
On stage and off stage. Yeah, cool. That's really cool. Thank you.
Carly, I think.
Yeah. So I saw that recently, I think about a year ago, there was a CBC list that put together 10 videos that prove Baroque music sounds amazing on marimba. And unusually, you had 2 videos on this list that were super nice. One by Couperin and a Bach Allemande. And the list is just full of other marimba superstars, including Ksenia as part of the Balkan percussion duo. I just had a good time listening through many of them.
Shout out.
Yeah, it's great. Then there's a little article too, and they kind of discuss like, why does Baroque music sound so amazing on marimba? I wonder if you have some thoughts on that.
What question?
It's a big one.
If you want to think for a second, I can actually add something from Lee Stevens. And Lee Stevens talks about Bach was a master of keyboard instruments, and he was an organ master. And basically, it was his ex-father-in-law was a Swiss engineer or something. I don't know, but anyway, he talked extensively about hearing Bach performed in Switzerland, and he says basically that the marimba on a technical level is actually somewhat similar to the foot manual of an organ. In terms of it's a keyboard with certain limitations, and also I don't know if Stevens directly says this or if I'm making this up, but in Baroque music, the percussive impetus of a note is so important, and harpsichord is such a great example of that, where harpsichord has no dynamics at all. It's simply the plucking of a string that creates a very immediate sound that has a certain amount of sustain to it, and then it's gone. And so I think marimba fits into that Baroque keyboard category very well. I would say marimba feels a lot more like a harpsichord to me than a piano, which maybe is why I so often don't enjoy piano.
Isn't it more like a xylophone?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, what's the difference?
And what is a xylophone other than a
what's the difference between a xylophone and but I totally agree. I think it totally makes sense. And what I would have said, and it makes sense with what you just said, is that you don't need lots of sustain to play Baroque music. It's not like impressionism. French music.
Vibraphone almost seems more suited to something like that, just with a limited range. But yeah.
Right.
So I think as soon as you go in the Romantical era, it's tricky. You have to choose carefully. So I think maybe that's why, and also maybe marimba can be very expressive, but it has its limitations, like harpsichord. And I love to work on harpsichord pieces because they don't have dynamics. They have to use the time. they have to change to do some little rubato or change some rhythms or slow down sometimes. I find it very interesting, and I think we can definitely use some of those tricks.
Yep. Yeah, the same tools for expression that we have, where we can't, say crescendo through a single note.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
If I could tack onto that also, my former teacher, Bill Mersch, his wife is actually a harpsichord player. And I mean, very, very well known, and performed Bach in the such and such room in London, all this stuff. But yeah, he talks about that's a big thing, is like harpsichordists have to create dynamics through things like embellishment. Like they can't play a note louder, and so yeah, that's a big influence on how he thinks about Bach on marimba.
Or I was working on not Rameau, Couperin, les barricades mystérieuses. It's on YouTube, but I saw a master class about that from Scott Ross, the harpsichord player, and the left hand does, I think at some point, just like 8 notes. It's supposed to be steady, but I think it's an harpsichord trick. Like he suggests to do just a little bit of ta ta ta, not ta 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 ta, but not ta 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 ta, like in between a ta 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 ta. Like it's kind of not even, but it will make it sound more legato.
Right.
And I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I always thought it just sounded ancient. Like it's a bar of wood. It just sounds so. It's like gut strings. Baroque instruments with gut strings sound so much more. They just sound older. they sound pre-industrial because it's not spun wound string cable. It's like marimba has that same kind of quality. Like you just took something from the earth and like made an instrument out of it.
I have a quick question. I guess for Andrew Lee in particular. Bach violin transcriptions, do you play in the original register, or do you prefer to take them down an octave?
Well, it's always a big question, but I'm a little bit conventional. I don't like losing the color, and same with like
play in the written register.
I don't like it. Changes the character. I like playing in the low register of the marimba. That's why I think maybe lute suites are more suited. But yeah, no, I pretty much try to stick with the original.
I kind of go back and forth. There are certain things that I like in the high register, like the faster, like the D minor G, D minor G from the violin partitas. Like I think sounds good up. But I mean, like the Chaconne, just that beautiful deep register, and I mean, it's been said by many people. I think Lee Stevens says this in his book, but like Bach was the great transcriber, and like the lute suites are a great example where he would take something written for another instrument and put it on lute. So it's not illegal, I think, to mess with the range. But yeah, it's
not.
I go back and forth on things.
It's not with the Chaconne. I really thought about that, and especially because the Brahms made an arrangement of the Chaconne for left hand on piano, and there's a lot of pedal there, and like he puts some dynamics and stuff, and it becomes like a romantic piece. But it's really nice, and it's almost more impressive. Like it's very convincing. I had to choose between both, and I was like, no, I'm playing Baroque music. I'm going to stick to the violin part.
It's incredible how many knife fights have broken out at the Weston Bar Hang at PASIC over this exact question. Like, do you play it down an octave or not? And just I think every year there's a couple marimbas are sent to the hospital from knife wounds.
It's really only safe to talk about on the podcast when we're all.
Let's go around. Let's go around here. Who has been sent to the hospital and who's sent someone to the hospital?
It's a very, very divisive, very divisive topic. They should probably start a new PAS committee to fix this. Yeah, there's only 80 committees. So
you guys say PASIC or PASIC?
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, that's another one.
PASIC, right? No, Mark Ford says PASIC, and even though he was a past president, I still think it should be PASIC. It looks like the word basic. That's That's my hot take for the podcast.
I think it's generational because
there was actually in some old percussive notes there was an argument. There was a joke about it, and they said it's an argument as old as PS itself, and it's like they named all these, like it spurred many fights in the North Texas Drumline and all these other like PA institutions.
It's like Ksenia's name. Like there's two factions are quickly forming in the world, on the podcast for sure, but also the percussion world at large. We had one Facebook question, and you really answered it already, but I'm gonna press you for one other option to answer it. And Milo Berger says, "What is a great piece of music not originally made for marimba performance that you would like to see transcribed or arranged on marimba?" And you already mentioned that Brahms early on in the episode, and that I thought, oh, that's clearly your answer for this question. But if I had to push you for a second one, could you find one for Milo?
That has not been transcribed yet.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that seems like what he's after.
No, it would be Brahms. Yeah, for now, that's really what I have in mind. Or the Chacon, because that's what I'm working on. But Chacon, it has been, I guess, done already, but I'm not I'm not watching any recordings right now. I don't want to be influenced by anybody. I want to create my own arrangement. Sometimes I pick some things from Brahms, like some things that are not feasible on marimba. I go see what Brahms did, and I try to make my own version. So no, that's really it. And I mean, I hope the Brahms will work.
What's the title one more time? What's the title one more time?
It's a ballad. Opus 10, number 4, and it's really nice. And usually when I make a transcription or an adaptation, I want it to sound as good like Dr. Gradus at Parnasson. This is as good, if not better, than piano. Like, I think this is very convincing. And usually that's my philosophy. If I choose to do something, it has to be at least as good. Like Introduction, Rondo Capriccioso from Saint-Saëns. It's as good. I'm convinced.
Mm-hmm. That's a very Nancy thing. Like, if you're going to do this, it needs to either be as good or you need to add to it somehow. Like, how does this?
I'm not sure, but I'll do it anyway. Okay?
I wanted to add one to get us way out of Baroque music. There's a percussionist, William Brown, that I think Ksenia knows fairly well. I don't know him personally, but we're Facebook friends, and he put up this little video a few weeks, I think it was a couple months ago at this point, of him messing around. And I think it was in his warm-up, he kind of stumbled across Baba O'Reilly by The Who on marimba. And it has that very articulate sound that the marimba does so well. It's like someone needs to put Baba O'Reilly on marimba, figure out the whole song. That'd be cool.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you all so much for episode 236, and thanks, Anna Julie. It's great to see you again.
Hey, it was so great to see you, and thanks everybody. It was I had a nice time. We had I thought we had great conversations.
Yeah, we did.
We enjoyed it. Okay.
Yeah. The recorder's at 124. I'll probably edit it down to 30 minutes, but it'll be all right. just kidding. It all stays. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much.